of the things about my teaching methods, I like it to be interactive. I like feedback. I like to hear what you all are thinking. I like to hear your perspective, even if it's something that if you disagree with, if you don't like the way that it was put, or you have more questions in terms of not understanding what was meant. Because the real purpose of education is not simply to fill up the mind with a bunch of information, but it's to create thought, it's to inspire thinking in a new direction. So the article begins by speaking on the fact that all of us are born into a world full of pre-established customs and traditions. The moment you were born into this world, there are things already laid out in society. Certain standards, certain expectations, certain desires that other people had for your life that you had nothing to do with deciding. These things were already in place, and as you grow up and go through the life process, you're taught to accept these things, right? And you're conditioned and expected to conform to these standards that other people have set up for you. And that's not fundamentally a bad thing. That could be a good thing if those standards and if those expectations are good. But in many instances, what we see around the planet today is people who are living up to the expectations that are decided for them. They're doing the things that they're told to do. They're meeting the requirements of the society around them, but unfortunately, those things are pointing them in the wrong direction. So then our generation has a very unique challenge of having to reassess the things that we were born into, to question, to think twice about the kind of things that are being told to us are correct, because in many instances we find that they're not. So we want to begin this presentation, if Amari can play a video, speaking about the importance of identity, speaking about the importance of who are you. And to assist us in that effort, I've brought Malcolm X.
Who are you? You don't know. Don't tell me Negro, that's nothing. What were you before the white man named you a Negro? And where were you? And what did you have? What was yours? What language did you speak then? What was your name? It couldn't have been Smith or Jones or Bunch or Powell. That wasn't your name. They don't have those kind of names where you and I came from. No, what was your name? And why don't you now know what your name was then? Where did it go? Where did you lose it? Who took it? And how did he take it? What tongue did you speak? How did the man take your tongue? Where is your history? How did the man wipe out your history? What did the man do to make you as dumb as you are right now?
Stop. What are your thoughts on that video? It was 56 seconds. I know it's very short, but it should have provoked a lot of thought in the mind. So I'd like to hear some of your thoughts on that video. How we as a whole still don't know where our history is. That's a great point. Anyone else?
It makes me wonder what was my name before my family's name.
What was our names? Why are names important?
It shows your culture and your identity.
So it's how you identify yourself. Okay, so we're going back to this idea of identity. So first of all, something happened to our history, and we don't know what it is. We don't know where our history went. And we know that in some way, shape or form, that has something to do with our names. Anything else? Any other thoughts on that brief clip from Malcolm X? What came into the mind as a result of hearing that clip? I know there's one other person in the room somewhere who had a thought.
That I was lied to.
That you were lied to.
Well, kind of from that, but also with this article, it kind of makes me feel frustrated because it's like everything that we learned was a manipulation, not necessarily false, but somewhat of a manipulation. It's like saying all these little kids have to learn all this, and you know what, just learn that to them. They don't have to listen, you have to change, you don't have to basically tell the truth with all this stuff.
Exactly. So do you all see the connection between the material in the text and what Malcolm X was talking about? See, because we're born into a society where we're not really taught who we are. I mean, how many of you went to school and learned a whole lot of stuff about Africa? How many of you, anybody? I mean, you learned exactly who we were as a people before the transatlantic slave trade. Just learn about it being slaves. It's almost like our history begins with slavery. Am I right? It's like we were like born on the ships, and then there's nothing from that point forward. You can't go back further than that. So then we just say, well, I'm an African-American. Well, that's not really revealing that much about an identity. It's a step forward. At least you know you're not an American. As Malcolm X said, at least you know that your ancestors are not the Pilgrims. But it doesn't really help you in terms of identifying what your cultural identity is. And why is identity so important? I like to compare it to a job description. How many of you have ever had a job before? You've had a job, and you know when you go to work a job, you're given a description and a title. You know, I am the cashier. You know, I am the janitor. I do cleanup. You know, I'm the person who serves the food. I'm the one who answers the phone. You have an identity on the job site which tells you what you're supposed to do and what you aren't supposed to do. You know what kind of training is needed in order to accomplish your job effectively. Is that right? You know that there's a certain kind of knowledge which comes along with that identity. And that in order to succeed at doing your job correctly, you need to have that knowledge. You need to know what to do when you go to work. And if you don't know your identity, if you don't know your job description, it's very likely that you'll go into work and not know what to do. As a matter of fact, somebody can convince you to do their job for them. Well, they sit back and do nothing, right? And then they'll benefit from your ignorance. Because they're like, well, you better do your job. And unless you know, wait a second, that's not what I'm supposed to be doing, you don't have anything in you which would help you resist. So you might be convinced that you're supposed to be cleaning the floors when you're actually the manager. And the guy cleaning the floors got you doing his job. And until you know, wait a second, I run this place, then you're going to keep on being played out of pocket. Does that make sense? Well, in terms of cultural identity, what is the impact of not knowing who you are? Why did Malcolm X take the time to point these things out to us? Why am I standing up here taking the time to explain these things? Because if you don't know who you are culturally, just like with the job description, you won't know what it is that you're supposed to be doing. More importantly, what it is you're not supposed to be doing. So you're then susceptible, you're vulnerable. You're exposed to someone who wants to lead you in the wrong direction and convince you that it's the right direction. To convince you to do things that benefit them at your own expense. And you lack the knowledge of, hey, this ain't actually what I'm supposed to be doing, right? And so you look at modern society and the way that it's set up. You have to ask yourself some questions. Is there somebody who's benefiting from the fact that we don't know who we are? How many of you have ever heard of the school to prison pipeline? Show of hands. Who could explain what the school to prison pipeline is? You've heard the term, but might not be familiar with the actual process. The school to prison pipeline is a term that refers to the fact that prison is a business. It is a private industry. Like the restaurant industry, right? If you want to open up a restaurant, you do a little bit of research into the demographics. And you realize there's X amount of people in this environment who like soul food, for example. So you're like, I'm going to open up a restaurant that's going to sell soul food to people in this area because there's a big demand for it. And I'm going to make a lot of money. And then once I set up my restaurant, if I want it to be successful, I got to advertise. I got to do all these different things in business. Anybody here studying business? And you know you got to do different things to ensure the success of your enterprise, right? If you want it to make money. Well, prison is a business. Prison is such an efficient business, it's actually on the stock market. That means people who aren't even in the prison business are investing in it because they know it's going to make a lot of money. So if prison is a business and prison is on the stock market, that means there's a lot of rich people who want that business to succeed. And like I said before, it's a private business, which means anybody can open up a prison. But the question becomes, how do you ensure that your business is successful if your business is prison?
Make sure a lot of people get locked up.
Make sure a lot of people get locked up, right? Well, if I own a restaurant and I want people to come into the restaurant, I advertise and I show how good the food is. Y'all go down the street and y'all smell the Popeyes because I have this huge fan blowing the Popeye smell into the street. They want to catch your attention and get you to come into their business. Why? So they can make money. Well, if prison is on the stock market, prison is a business, they need people to go to prison. But how do you advertise prison? Music. Who said that? Amara, you said it? How do you advertise prison? How do you convince people to perform the actions that will cause them to support your business? You need some way, right? And so music keeps coming back from the audience. Why? Because rappers are paid to advertise a lifestyle which has a tendency to do what? Get them locked up. So we can see now that there's a system in place that has a job description for you. There's a system in place which sees young black people growing up and says, I know exactly what I need them to do in my society. We do not need strong black men in school. We do not need strong black men over families. We do not need strong black men exercising leadership over their communities. We need strong black men in prison. We don't benefit from having black men in the house. We don't benefit from having black men being strong leaders of the community. But where do we benefit? We benefit from having black men in prison. So then we create media. We create systems. We create plans of action designed to ensure a greater amount of black men in prison than anywhere else. And to the best of our ability, because we put this thing on the stock market, we want our objectives to be fulfilled. Are y'all following me? So then we got to figure out a way to give you, the black people from a very early age, a mindset which would in some way, shape, or form help us get them in prison. They say Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, right? How many of you have heard that before? How many of you believe that?
He didn't want to.
He didn't want to? How many of you think that he actually freed the slaves? I'll tell you what Abraham Lincoln did. Abraham Lincoln created a situation where he simply moved our ancestors from being privately owned. From private ownership, like the Johnsons or the Smiths or the, you know what I'm saying, the Jones, from that family owning you to now the state owns you. You would switch from private ownership to federal ownership. And the only way a human being, a black person, could be brought back under the private ownership, because that's what slavery is, legally. According to the Constitution, after Abraham Lincoln, the only way for that to happen was if they committed a felony and they were incarcerated. Then they lose all of the rights that they gained through the Emancipation Proclamation. And they are legally, technically, reclassified as a slave. Why am I bringing this up in a religion class? Doesn't seem relevant, does it? Seems like I came in here and changed the curriculum. Well, the slavery system in America was designed to condition black people to accept a certain position in life. And in the 21st century, the old slave system has gone away. We don't see it in the same form. It's updated itself. And then this modern version is doing fundamentally the same thing, working to convince people to accept a certain position in life, to see themselves as having a certain job description, right? And according to this job description, here's what we're supposed to be doing with ourselves. Here's what we're supposed to be doing with our lives. Here's how we're supposed to be acting. And ultimately, the idea of spirituality is designed to elevate your mind beyond the trappings of the modern world. It's designed to elevate your thinking to see things from another perspective so that you can question, right, and investigate the direction that you're being led. So in our generation, we have unique challenges. Every generation has its own unique challenges. Dr. King's generation had theirs, right? We can go back all the way back to the times of Yeshua, Jesus, and they had theirs. Different generations, different challenges. But it's incumbent on the people in each generation to realize those challenges and to generate whatever energy is required to overcoming them. So that's why in this particular class, we're going to be approaching religion from a different perspective. We're not going to deal with it from this perspective of here's some beliefs to believe in, right? Because these things have to once again become integrated. They have to become a part of our lives again. They got to be able to assist us and help us see the world around us from a different perspective. Because the perspective that we have been given is designed to facilitate that school to prison pipeline.